Just think of the children, Bud, think of the children. Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Welcome to my Red Nose Day Charity Special 2020. Today's review will be TOON 2nd Edition by Steve Jackson Games. Okay, first a bit of history. In late 2019, I made an offhand, half-joking, not really meant to be taken too serious comment about doing a review with comical giant-sized Mickey Mouse gloves on for charity, and was sadly, for most involved, i.e. me, held to it. One of my patrons, Orcus Dorcas, yes that's his real name, asked me if I really would do it, to which I foolishly said, why not, genuinely thinking nothing would come of it. He then went ahead and set this up, garnering some generous donations, no doubt from legitimate businessmen in his area, you know the type, and Pookie from Reviews from Relay A promptly sent me a copy of the book. I bet he had a massive box of them in his loft, and the both of them are now rubbing their non-comically gloved hands that it was me instead of them, playing on the guilt I would feel if I backed out. And so here we are. Isn't it just great? Okay, the book itself. Released in 1991, TOON 2nd Edition is a 208-page softback book that puts players in the role of cartoon characters. This particular book is considered the deluxe edition, as not only does it incorporate the original game, but also has TOON Silly Stuff, Son of TOON, and TOON Strikes Again, so it's essentially 4 books in one. Once again, thanks guys. Right, to the cover. Here we have a fairly okay piece by Kyle Miller that does its best to showcase the horrors contained within. Onto the inside. Once we get past the credits and table of contents, we find ourselves at Chapter 1, Welcome to TOON. Here it sells the game to us by describing it as a crazy world where the laws of physics work only when you notice them, animals speak perfect English, and you spend most of your time trying to cheat or blow each other up. It tells you that all you need to play this wacky fun fest is contained within, also explaining that you can play any cartoon character you've seen in movies or TV, or just make up your own. It gives a little on what role-playing actually is, saying that it works better with 3 to 4 players, and that the Dungeon Master of TOON is known as the Animator. It then goes on to have a bit for experienced role-players to read. It explains that in TOON you can't die, and that the game is action-packed and logic takes a backseat, explaining that half the fun of the game is failing. It tells you to forget everything you know and to act before you think. After this we move on to Chapter 2, the catchily named What the heck does that mean? Here it talks about dice briefly and focuses on attributes. In TOON you have 4. Muscle, strength under any other guise. Zip, which is speed, alertness, dexterity and coordination. Smart, which is just that, how smart they are. And chutzpah, which is how pushy your character is. These are accompanied by some hilarious illustrations to demonstrate the stats. We then move on to Chapter 3, Getting Started. Here it gives you some basic introductory rules, followed by a short adventure with some ready-made characters, the Cartoon Olympics. It then moves on to skills. There are 23, yes, 23 different skills in TOON. Characters will have a number between 1 to 9 for a skill, and to pass the skill you roll equal or less to the skill on 2d6. It then moves on to one of the most important skills in TOON, fighting. To do this, both characters roll 2d6. If both of them pass, nothing happens. If both of them roll higher than their skill, nothing happens. If one passes and the other fails, one takes damage. If someone doesn't want to fight, all they need to say is, I want to get away, to escape, though your opponent gets one last swing at you before you go. In the sidebar, it gives an example of fighting involving the non-litigiously named Mac the Mouse. Damage is done on a d6 and comes off a character's hit points. It's that simple. If you drop to 0, you fall down. In TOON, nobody ever dies, so being reduced to 0 hit points means that they just bounce back in the next scene. This is measured by giving the player a timeout for 3 minutes. Think of it like being a rubbish of fighting sin bin. The other skills that are appropriate here are running, again roll 2d6. If you fail, you do something comical like falling over your own feet. This is used mostly to adjudicate chase sequences, as mechanically similar to fighting. The other skill is throwing. If this is something aimed at another character, then they can evade it using the dodge skill. The next skill it discusses is fast talk. This covers the tendency cartoon characters have of talking themselves out of trouble. You can essentially fast talk someone until you fail a roll, and then they will never fall for that line again. There's a skill called resist fast talk. Of course there is. The next one is fire gun. Gunfire can be dodged, and damage from a gun starts at d6 and goes up in amount depending on the size of the gun. The next thing it covers is the actual aim of the game, plot points. These are awarded by the animator whenever you do something really funny or clever, or when you complete the adventure. It then goes on to discuss the role of the animator, describing them as part storyteller, part referee. They advise that in a normal round the player has one action, for example fighting. However, a reaction to a roll, for example using dodge, doesn't use up your turn. After this we move on to the small introductory scenario, the Cartoon Olympics. Now, I'm not going to spoil what happens in the contained adventures, but I will give a brief overview. The scenario is for 2 players and the animator. It is based in the Anytown Any Dome, a tiny sporting arena, and it involves various animals competing in the Cartoon Olympics against each other in various events such as boxing, the javelin and the marathon. There are a number of cartoon trope characters to choose to run with various stereotype personalities, and the whole thing is being run by Judge Mole, who can barely see, and interrupted by a group of monkeys who try to interfere and cause mayhem. Okay, so at this point you may have noticed that I have these little sticky things on the end of the fingers of the gloves. These are to enable me to actually turn the pages, else this video would have been long in the extreme, would have eventually led to me being institutionalised. The next chapter is called Creating Cartoon Characters. This chapter covers 4 things: character generation, skill, shtick, and being an animator. It gives a bit of information on how to roll up a character, stressing that you can be anything you want, be that a rabbit, a robot, or a toaster. A toaster? Anyway, if you can't decide, then it gives you some extra strange choices on some tables near the back of the book, or you can roll D66 and refer to this one here. The next thing you do after deciding what you are is rolling your stats. Each of the 4 dice are a single D6, or you can distribute 14 points however you want. Hit points are D6 plus 6, and then we move on to character descriptions, which is fairly self-explanatory. It talks about characters having natural enemies, things like dogs and cats or cats and mice, and then goes on to beliefs and goals. Beliefs take the form of things like a job should be done well or not at all, and goals are things like inspire panic and destroy property, or cheat anybody wherever possible. It also gives us a table of occupations. It then discusses possessions. Characters can carry 8 things that are always tucked away inside the metaphorical back pocket. These can be almost anything: an anvil, a comical giant mallet, or a gun that shoots a bang flag. Small things like balloons, matches or rubber bands have an unlimited supply. You can't drop these items, however if you fall down, other characters can take your stuff, with the caveat being that one item will be overlooked, especially if they're going to be imprisoned. Characters can have up to 4 unusual items amongst their 8, one of which can be a gizmo. These are all-purpose items that are just right for the situation, for example a parachute for when you're falling out of a plane, or a pie to slam into someone's face. You can buy extra gizmos for 1 plot point each, up to a maximum of 4. Once a gizmo is used, it stays in that current form for the rest of the adventure. Of course, gizmos can backfire, and the animator will roll to see if this happens. Chapter 5 is the boldly titled How to Do Everything. In this chapter it goes into details on skills and shticks. There are 23 skills in total, and each one has a rating of 1 to 9. Each skill is associated with an attribute that starts at the attribute's number. Starting characters have 30 skill points that can be added to their skills however you want. These can't be used to raise attributes. Skills have a maximum rating of 9, and a player who rolls a 2 when using a skill automatically succeeds, even if they have a skill rating of 1. In a fight, a 2 cannot be responded to. Shticks are amazing abilities that are not usually allowed under the skill rules. Shticks are gained by using skill points. The first one can be bought normally, however any more beyond that costs 5 extra skill points. Shticks can only be improved by spending plot points. No character can ever have more than 2 shticks, and they always start at skill level 5. Skills and shticks can be improved by spending plot points. These are the experience points that TOON uses. 2 plot points will raise a skill by 1 point, and it's 4 plot points to raise a shtick by 1 point. Spending 3 plot points will buy a character a temporary shtick. This lasts for 1 adventure and can be over and above the 2 usually allowed. These are a skill level 5 and can't be increased. The shtick can take the form of a wondrous gadget or a magical item should the animator so desire. Now, I'm not going to go through each of the individual skills, as everyone knows what climb means, and frankly I would lose the will to live. However, I will go through some of the more interesting interpretations, such as pick up everything, which literally allows the character to pick up things like giant boulders, airplanes and the like. On a roll of a 12, they manage to pick it up and then it drops on top of them. There is identify dangerous thing, which helps a character understand if something will harm them, and there's the oh so useful pass detect shoddy goods, which does just that. It then moves on to shticks. Things like bag of many things, which allows the character to pull out of a bag whatever the situation needs. A failure produces something random. There is coat of arms, which gives the character what are essentially Inspector Gadget-like abilities, and there is cosmic shift. The best way to describe this is when Wile E. Coyote paints a tunnel in a cliff face and then the Roadrunner zooms through it, but then Wile E. Coyote discovers that it's still a cliff face when he charges after them. Yeah, that one. There is Incredible Luck, which does just that, with the result always being strange. And there is Quick Change Disguise, you know, the kind of thing that allowed Bugs Bunny to change into Adolf Hitler back in the day. I bet you'd forgotten about that one. After this it goes into one-shot shticks and personalised ones. Those that only work under specific conditions and can cost less to obtain. Finally, thank the gods, it talks about the effectiveness of shticks on others. That being that they cost 2 extra plot points, and if it's an upgrade to one you already have, it's 4 extra plot points. Of course, a shtick could work on others to drive a particular plot point, but this is at the animator's discretion. These can be dodged like attacks, however, the shtick will then ricochet and hit another in the area. Chapter 6 entitled Fine Tuning. Tuning. Get it? Here it discusses the essential components of running a Toon adventure. The most important of these are the running time, i.e. how long is it going to be, the cast of characters, a list of the NPCs that the players will run into, the location, that being where it's set, whether that be the jungle, a desert island or the moon, the situation, no, not the abs flaunting moron from TV years ago, but a broad outline of what will happen to the characters, goals, i.e. what they hope to achieve, and the plot, which is self-explanatory. In this chapter, the sidebars cover many cartoon tropes, with one here being how geography works in Toon, and that people get from North Dakota to the moon in the blink of an eye. Turning the page, we have a section on sound effects and how they should be used. It's basic onomatopoeia. It talks about how the animator should deal with unexpected situations with the rule, when in doubt, roll and shout, which I imagine wouldn't become annoying at all. It talks about illogical logic. This is where it talks about how bizarre things can have their own logic, with the example being that an ostrich being chased may suddenly plunge their head in the sand and the chasers may stop and search for it, failing to see it because it can't see them. It explains that sometimes being dumb is a good thing, especially in Toon. After this, we go into cause and effect, with the idea being that just because something works for one person doesn't mean it'll work for everyone. For example, it uses a character hopping on a cannonball and being shot across a river, but it may blow up for the next character who tries it. Characters should absolutely expect the unexpected. In this sidebar, it goes into cartoony things you've seen happen in cartoons time and time again. Here it discusses instant mail, those situations where a character will send a letter and get an instant response. It talks about independent shadows, instant fine print, and running out of gas. Again, we've seen all these particular tropes in cartoons before. Following this, we move on to cartoon coincidences. It talks about how they happen all the time in cartoons and can take the form of almost anything you want to drive the plot along. After this, it goes into the rule of boggling. This is when something completely unexpected happens to a character that makes their jaw drop to the floor, they're struck speechless, or the like. They can even do double takes, except when hit by a cream pie to the face, which just leaves them standing there looking silly. It goes into the difference between characters who are animals and real animals, and then gives us some more cartoony things. Here we have the soaring holes and soaring through branches. You know, the thing where a character saws a hole in the floor and the floor falls away, with a similar thing happening with branches. It also covers magic beanstalk beans and the conscience, i.e. the character's conscience sitting on their shoulder as a little angel, possibly with a little devil on the other shoulder. After this, we move on to cartoon gimmicks. It covers things like a compass that will always point towards the thing the character wants, the flag gun, the gun that shoots a flag with a bang on it, and also the pen or eraser which allows characters to be rubbed out mid-action or new things to be drawn into the scene. It talks about the interactions of inanimate objects and how they sometimes come to life, signs being used as running gags, and moving in Toon time, which is usually in an instant. After this, it talks about passing out plot points, essentially the when and why to give these to players in order for them to improve their character. Turning the page, it goes into more cartoon gimmicks. We have the portable hole, magic wands, and the fountain of youth, which are all fairly self-explanatory. It discusses how to use plot points and then moves on to the perfect animator. It gives the TOON commandments, which if implemented in their entirety would probably have people making other plans the next time you wanted to play. It has a section called Don't Panic, where it talks about how to deal with sticky situations in Toon, and then a section called What's in the Bottle, where it has some more cartoony things that the characters can encounter, things like dehydrated water, vanishing cream, disappearing ink, and earthquake pills, though I've never heard of those. Following this, we have a section called Writing Cartoons, which talks about how to put together a scenario, and then how to be a great player, and then the final fade out. After this, we have no less than 18 scenarios, which range from short subject, which is similar to your average mini cartoon, to cartoon series, which are multi-part scenarios. Now, as per my normal rules regarding scenarios and rulebooks, I'm not going to spoil them for you, as frankly reading them got me near the point of self-harm, but needless to say you'll get many hours of enjoyment to put your players through. So at this point we skip ahead to chapter 10, where it gives us a TOON adventure generator, which allows you to quickly put together a situation by rolling on these tables, followed by a situation on these tables. After this we generate a bad guy, a character and motive, as well as an important object, and this is followed by a general random event, and even has a table roll for an apocalyptic big finish, so yeah, there's that. Chapter 11 further tests our endurance by going into places to go. This details the kind of wackiness you would find in typical cartoons. Things like a robot factory, a costume shop, a hardware store, a haunted house, which even goes into details on cartoon ghosts, and the Old West, the carnival, outer space, and finally Space Station Zero, which goes into Martians and other aliens. Moving on to chapter 12, it goes into some sample characters that are in no way at all based on existing characters at all. No siree. And then after this we have silly tables. This has the effects of boggles, things falling from the sky, random item animals, random traps, random disguise, really silly species, failed hypnosis, and if really silly species wasn't crazy enough for you, we have unbelievably silly species. There's the Call Me a Taxi table, failed shape change table, bottle contents table, and the random teleport location table. Following this we have the index of characters, and to be the cherry on top of this sanity-shattering tome of mind-numbingness, the TOON character sheet. As you may have gathered, there are a lot of things that I would rather be doing than playing TOON. A short list would be thus: jumping out of an airplane without a parachute, wrestling a tiger, swimming with hungry great white sharks, juggling chainsaws blindfolded. The list goes on and on. My thoughts are that this would be a great system for teaching children how to roleplay in a very simple way that they could easily understand. Additionally, it would probably be fun in a convention-style game, however, I'm not sure how long your sanity could last if this was your weekly game. Usually, I would give a game like this a score, but rather than that, I'm going to leave you with a simple statement. TOON. Not even once. If you enjoyed this review, please make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Also, if you're interested in buying this product, well, please don't. Just make a little donation to charity for Red Nose Day instead. Let's be honest, you'd never really play it. Lastly, if you like what I produce here and this hasn't put you off completely, then maybe think about supporting me on Patreon. Bud out.